Dr. Elias Reed stood in the dimly lit control room, his eyes fixed on the large screen displaying the incoming data. The room was buzzing with nervous energy as the team awaited the arrival of the unknown spacecraft. Next to Elias, Captain Mark Jensen, a seasoned pilot and military strategist, checked his communications gear. "Signals clear, Dr. Reed. Whatever's coming, we'll see it in real time," Mark said, his voice steady. Elias nodded, turning to face his colleague, Dr. Alan Torres, a specialist in xenolinguistics. "Alan, be ready. If they attempt communication, I want us to respond promptly and correctly." Alan adjusted his glasses, his gaze never leaving his console. "Everything's set up. We'll bridge the gap, Elias, don't worry." The tension broke momentarily as a younger team member, Lucas Wright, a graduate student in astrophysics, chimed in. "Do you think they'll be friendly?" His voice was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Mark let out a short laugh. "Let's hope so, kid. We're not equipped for a space battle here." As the alien ship entered the atmosphere, the screens showed its struggle to maintain stability. "Looks like they're in trouble," Mark observed, leaning closer to the radar. Elias's heart raced. "Prepare the landing guides. Let's make sure they land safely." Humanity's first impression needs to be one of help, not hostility. The team worked quickly, coordinating with the space agency to deploy emergency landing protocols. The alien craft, battered and emitting a faint glow, finally touched down in the designated safe zone. Elias and his team, along with a small security detail led by Mark, approached the spacecraft. The hatch opened slowly, revealing a lone alien figure, visibly injured. She was tall, with iridescent skin and eyes that reflected a world of wisdom and fear. Elias stepped forward, his hand raised in peace. "We mean no harm. We're here to help." The alien studied him and his companions warily before responding in a series of melodic tones that Alan quickly set to translating. "She's saying thank you," Alan relayed. "She's hurt and needs medical assistance." Without hesitation, Mark directed the security team to bring the medical unit. "Let's get her some help, Stat." Elias kept his eyes on the alien, who now struggled to stand. "I'm Elias, and this is Mark and Alan. We're scientists, not soldiers. You're safe here." The alien, steadied by the gentle hands of the medical team, managed a nod. "Arya," she said, the translator catching her name. Mark stepped closer, offering a supportive smile. "Welcome to Earth, Arya. Let's get you fixed up." As they escorted her to the medical facility, Elias felt a profound sense of responsibility. This first encounter could define future relations between humanity and Arya's people. He was determined to ensure it began with empathy and understanding. Back in the control room, the team watched in silence. Lucas broke the quiet, his voice filled with awe. "We just made history, didn't we?" "Yes," Elias replied, his eyes on the screen showing Arya receiving care. "And hopefully, it's the start of something good." In the secure medical facility, Arya lay on a specially adapted bed, her breathing steady as she recovered from the ordeal. Dr. Elias Reed watched over her, periodically checking the monitors that displayed her vital signs. Beside him, Dr. Alan Torres was busy adjusting the translation devices, eager to facilitate clearer communication. "Her physiology isn't too different from ours, but there are nuances we need to understand to ensure proper care," Elias commented, observing the data. Alan nodded, his fingers dancing over the keyboard. "I'm updating the translator with the medical terminology we've gathered so far. It should help with more accurate diagnostics." Captain Mark Jensen and Lucas Wright entered the room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. "How's our guest doing?" Mark asked, his voice low. "Stable, for now," Elias replied. "We're making every effort to understand her needs better." Arya stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Seeing the group around her, she sat up slowly, her gaze settling on each face. "Thank you." Her voice echoed through the translator, clear and calm. "You're welcome, Arya. We want to make sure you're in good health," Elias said, stepping closer. "Can you tell us more about where you come from? It might help us take care of you better." Arya looked thoughtful, then began speaking in her melodic language. Alan monitored the translation closely. "She says she's from a planet called Seraphine. It's several light years away. They've been exploring space for centuries, but haven't interacted much with other sentient species. Lucas, unable to contain his enthusiasm, leaned in. What brought you to Earth, Arya? The alien's eyes seemed to brighten with a mixture of sadness and resolve. We were exploring nearby systems when our ship was damaged by a meteoroid. I was sent to find help. Mark nodded, understanding the gravity of her mission. You've shown great courage, Arya. We'll help you contact your people as soon as we can. Elias observed the interaction, pleased with the growing rapport. Arya, we're curious about your culture. Sharing information might help us assist you better and ensure you feel more at home here. With Alan's assistance, Arya began to describe her world, a place of vast oceans and floating cities, where art and science flourished side by side. The team listened, fascinated by her descriptions of Seraphine's advancements in technology and social harmony. As the hours passed, the bond between the team and Arya strengthened. They shared meals, with Lucas introducing Arya to some simple Earth foods, which she accepted with cautious curiosity. Is there anything else you need to feel more comfortable? Elias asked as they sat together after the meal. Arya hesitated, then spoke. On Seraphine, we value the exchange of ideas and learning. Perhaps I could learn more about your sciences and arts. Elias exchanged a look with Mark and Alan. We could arrange for you to have access to our databases and libraries. And maybe you could share more about your technologies and culture with us. Arya nodded, a smile crossing her features. I would like that very much. As the day drew to a close, Elias felt a sense of accomplishment. They had not only saved a life, but had opened a door to a new world. Let's set up a plan for cultural exchange, he suggested to the team. This could be the beginning of a great friendship. Mark clapped Elias on the shoulder. Who would have thought? From expecting a potential threat to making a new ally. It's going to be an interesting time ahead. Lucas grinned. Who needs sci-fi movies when you're living one? The men laughed together, the sound echoing lightly in the room, filled with the promise of new understanding and potential friendships across the stars. The following week, Dr. Elias Reed arranged for a series of cultural exchange sessions between Arya and various teams at the research facility. Dr. Alan Torres and Captain Mark Jensen were integral to these sessions, facilitating discussions and ensuring that both sides understood the nuances of each other's languages and expressions. In one of the well-lit conference rooms, Arya stood beside a digital display, her slender finger tracing the outlines of Seraphine's cities and landscapes. This is where I come from, she explained, her voice resonating through the translator. Our cities float on the ocean, powered by the tides and sustained by the sea. Elias, fascinated, leaned forward. That's remarkable engineering. It's like something out of a dream. Mark, always the tactician, was curious about the practical aspects. How do you deal with storms or marine life impacts? Arya tilted her head, considering the question. Our cities are mobile. We can navigate away from storms. As for marine life, our technology allows us to coexist without interference. Lucas, scribbling notes furiously, looked up. Do you use similar technology for space travel? Yes, much of it is adapted for space, Arya replied. Efficiency and harmony are central to our designs. The session turned into an interactive discussion, with Arya answering questions about Seraphine's governance, culture, and technology. Elias noticed the team's growing admiration for her knowledge and the sophistication of her people. Later, Elias took Arya on a tour of the facility's cultural archives, where they viewed artifacts from Earth's history. Alan, who had a keen interest in anthropology, joined them, eager to discuss the parallels and contrasts between their cultures. As they walked through the exhibits, Alan pointed to an ancient Egyptian papyrus. This is one of the earliest forms of writing from Earth. It helped people communicate and record history. Arya was intrigued. We have similar relics. Ours are made from a bioluminescent algae. They glow under certain conditions to signify different historical epochs. Mark, who had joined the tour, chuckled. I guess both our people found light in the darkness, huh? The mood was light and educational. Elias introduced Arya to various scientific departments, where she eagerly engaged with researchers, discussing potential synergies between human and Seraphine technologies. In the laboratory, Dr. Henry Liu, a materials scientist, showed Arya some of the adaptive materials they were developing. These can change their properties based on temperature and pressure. Could be useful in space, he explained. Arya nodded enthusiastically. We use similar materials. Perhaps we could exchange data? Our materials are tuned to respond to magnetic fields as well. Henry was delighted. That would be incredible. We could learn a lot from each other. The day concluded with a small musical session. Lucas, who played the guitar, performed a few simple melodies. To everyone's surprise, Arya sang a hauntingly beautiful song from Seraphine, her voice ethereal and moving. That was beautiful, Elias said, genuinely touched. Music really is a universal language. Arya smiled. It is. It tells stories just like your artifacts. As they walked back to her quarters, Elias reflected on the day's events. The exchanges were more than just educational. They were building bridges. Arya, I hope today was as enriching for you as it was for us. It was, Elias. Thank you for being so welcoming, Arya replied, her tone warm. Elias nodded. We're just getting started. There's so much more to share and learn. Back in his office, Elias, Mark, and Alan discussed the day's successes. We're making real progress, Mark observed. Not just in learning, but in understanding. Alan agreed. It's fascinating. Every session with Arya opens new possibilities. Elias leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Yes, it's more than science. It's about making connections, understanding each other's world. This is how peace begins. With that thought, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The cultural exchange was not only enlightening, it was a step towards a deeper, more meaningful collaboration. As the cultural exchange program continued, Dr. Elias Reed, Captain Mark Jensen, and Dr. Alan Torres became even more invested in ensuring Arya's comfort during her stay on Earth. They organized a series of outings and activities designed to introduce her to various aspects of human life. One evening, in a tranquil part of the research facility's garden, Elias and Mark arranged for a small outdoor dinner under the stars. They had set up a table with an array of dishes from different cultures, hoping to find something that Arya might enjoy. So, Arya, each of these dishes represents a different region of Earth, Elias explained, pointing to the spread. We thought you might like to try a bit of each. Arya looked delighted as she sampled a piece of sushi. This is similar to a dish we have on Seraphine, though ours is based on a type of sea fern. Mark laughed. I guess sushi's a universal concept then. Here, try the enchiladas. Totally different, but delicious. As Arya navigated the new flavors, her expression thoughtful and curious, she seemed to relax more. You've gone to such lengths to make me feel welcomed, she said, genuinely touched. Elias smiled warmly. It's important to us that you feel comfortable and at home here. The conversation turned lighter as they ate. Mark shared stories from his military travels, while Elias talked about some of the more humorous mishaps he'd encountered in his research career. Arya listened intently, occasionally sharing anecdotes from her own explorations. Later, as they strolled around the garden, Arya turned to Elias. Back on Seraphine, it's customary to share tales of the stars. Each constellation has its own story. That sounds fascinating, Alan, who had joined them for the walk, responded. We have similar traditions here. Star lore is a big part of many Earth cultures. Arya pointed towards the sky, picking out a pattern of stars. That arrangement reminds me of the harpist, a figure from our myths who played music that could be heard across galaxies. Elias looked where she was pointing. We call that Orion, a great hunter. The discussion of stars led them back to the table, where Lucas had set up a small telescope. Let's have a closer look, he suggested enthusiastically. As each took turns at the telescope, sharing knowledge about the cosmos, the evening slipped into night. The air grew cooler, and Mark brought out some blankets. You must miss Seraphine, Mark said as he handed Arya a blanket. A little sadness touched her eyes. I do. But being here, learning about Earth, sharing these moments, it makes the distance feel less vast. Elias noticed her reflective mood. If there's anything else we can do to make your stay better, just let us know. Arya looked at him, her expression softening. Thank you, Elias. Actually, there is something. I would love to learn more about Earth's music. What you shared tonight was very moving. That can be arranged, Elias replied. Tomorrow, we'll organize a music day. You can hear a variety of genres, from classical to jazz to rock. Music day sounds wonderful, Arya said, her spirits lifted. As the group made their way back indoors, Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. The evening had not only brought them closer to understanding Arya's world, but also deepened their friendship. It was these small, shared experiences, he realized, that truly bridged worlds. Back in his office, Elias, Mark, and Alan discussed their plans for the upcoming music day. It's more than just showing her our culture, Elias mused. It's about making her feel like she's a part of it. Alan nodded in agreement. And who knows? Maybe we'll find more universal connections through music. Elias grinned. Exactly. Let's make it a day to remember. The next day, Dr. Elias Reed, along with Captain Mark Jensen and Dr. Alan Torres, organized a special event dedicated to exploring the diversity of human music. The spacious hall of the research facility was equipped with various musical instruments, speakers, and a large screen for video presentations. As Arya entered the room, her eyes widened in amazement. "This looks incredible," she remarked, taking in the array of instruments and setups. "We thought we'd give you a broad taste of what Earth has to offer musically," Elias explained, guiding her to a seat in front of the stage. "Each piece you'll hear today is tied to emotions, stories, or historical events." The music day kicked off with a classical piano piece played by Lucas, who had volunteered to show off his skills. The melodic lines filled the room, eliciting a serene atmosphere. As the piece concluded, Arya applauded enthusiastically. "That was beautiful, Lucas," Arya said. "The emotions conveyed are so palpable." Lucas bowed slightly, pleased. "Thank you, Arya. Next, we have something quite different." Mark then introduced a jazz trio that started into an improvisational piece. The lively rhythms and the playful exchange of melodies between the saxophone, drums, and bass guitar offered a stark contrast to the classical piano. Alan leaned over to Arya. "Jazz is all about improvisation and the interaction between musicians. It's very dynamic." Arya nodded, clearly enjoying the performance. "It feels spontaneous, like it's being created right here and now." As the day progressed, Arya was introduced to various music genres. There were soulful blues, energetic rock, and thoughtful folk music, each selected to demonstrate the spectrum of human emotion and creativity. Between performances, Elias discussed the cultural significance of each genre. "Music not only entertains us," he explained, "it also tells stories, preserves history, and expresses things we might not be able to say in words." Mark chimed in with anecdotes from his travels, where music had been a universal language that helped him connect with people worldwide. "No matter where you go, music has a way of breaking down barriers," he said. Later in the day, the floor was opened for interactive sessions. Arya, curious and eager, tried her hand at playing a few instruments under the guidance of the musicians. Her attempt at the guitar, under Lucas's guidance, brought smiles and light applause from everyone. "This is harder than it looks," Arya laughed, handing the guitar back to Lucas. "But it's fascinating." The highlight came when Arya decided to share a piece of her planet's music. Using a small device she carried with her, she projected the sounds of Seraphine. The music was unlike anything the team had heard before. Ethereal tones mixed with what sounded like natural elements. Alan was deeply moved. "It's as if the music itself is alive, breathing." "Yes," Arya responded. "Our music is meant to mimic the natural world around us." As the event drew to a close, Elias, Mark, and Alan gathered around Arya, who seemed more relaxed and at home than ever before. Elias spoke for the group. "We hope today has been as enlightening for you as it has been for us." Arya's smile was bright, her eyes reflecting a deep appreciation. "I've learned so much today, not just about your music, but about humanity. You've shown me a side of Earth I didn't know existed," Mark added, "and you've given us a glimpse into Seraphine that we'll never forget." As they walked Arya back to her quarters, the conversations were lively, filled with plans to explore more cultural aspects in the days to come. Music had indeed proven to be a bridge between their worlds, opening paths to deeper understanding and friendship. In the weeks following the music day, the relationship between Arya and the research team, particularly Dr. Elias Reed, deepened significantly. The trust and camaraderie that had been nurtured through cultural exchanges began to take a more personal turn, especially between Arya and Elias. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the facility's garden, Elias and Arya found themselves walking along the path lined with Earth's flowering plants. The garden was a project of Dr. Alan Torres, who had recently taken an interest in botany. Alan tells me these flowers are from various parts of the world, Elias mentioned, pointing to a cluster of bright marigolds. Each one adapted to its environment in unique ways. Arya leaned in to smell one of the flowers, her expression thoughtful. It's much like beings, isn't it? Adapting, surviving, thriving. Elias nodded, watching her. Exactly. Speaking of thriving, how are you finding Earth now that you've been here a while? Arya looked up, meeting his gaze. I've learned so much, Elias. Not just about your planet, but about myself. And much of it is thanks to you. They continued to walk, the silence comfortable between them. As they reached a bench, Elias gestured for her to sit. Arya, there's something I've been meaning to ask you, he began, hesitating slightly. All this time, we've shared so much about our worlds, but we've skirted around how we feel about all this. Arya turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the soft lights that began to twinkle in the garden. And how do you feel, Elias? Elias took a deep breath. I feel like I've discovered something incredible, not just in a scientific sense, but personally. You've opened my eyes to so many things. Arya reached out, her hand lightly touching his. I feel the same. I was so afraid when I first arrived. I expected, well, not to find kindness, or friendship, or, she paused, someone like you. Elias looked at her hand on his heart beating faster. I think we're at the beginning of something wonderful, Arya. Something neither of us expected. They sat in silence for a moment before Arya spoke again, her voice soft. On Seraphine, when two beings feel a connection, they share a bond ceremony. It's simple but meaningful. They exchange tokens of their worlds. Do you have something like that here? She asked. Elias thought for a moment. We have many customs, but perhaps we could create our own ceremony. A mix of both our cultures. Arya smiled. I would like that very much. The conversation lingered into the night, as they discussed what their ceremony would involve. It was during these talks that their feelings for each other became clear. Elias found himself not only fascinated by the alien before him, but deeply attracted to her spirit and her intellect. A few days later, they decided to exchange tokens. Elias gave Arya a small, beautifully crafted globe of Earth, while Arya presented Elias with a crystal that glowed faintly with the light of her home star. As they exchanged their gifts, Elias leaned in and kissed Arya. It was a gentle, exploratory kiss, full of the promise of new discoveries. Arya responded, her own curiosity mingling with a growing affection. The night deepened around them, filled with a sense of wonder and intimacy. They continued to talk, to laugh, to explore their feelings under the stars. It's strange, Elias murmured as they eventually stood to head back. I was supposed to be your guide to Earth, but you've shown me universes I hadn't known existed. Arya squeezed his hand. And I thought I was here to learn about humanity, but I've learned about heart. Their relationship, built on a foundation of mutual respect and curiosity, had blossomed into something neither had anticipated, but both deeply cherished. As they walked back to the facility, hand in hand, the future seemed filled with endless possibilities. The weeks turned into months, and the bond between Arya and Elias grew stronger with each passing day. However, the reality of Arya's impending departure loomed over them, casting a shadow on their newfound happiness. It was during one of their nightly walks in the garden that Elias brought up the subject they had both been avoiding. Elias, Arya began, her voice hesitant, I've been thinking about my return to Seraphine. It's difficult, knowing I have to leave. Elias stopped walking, taking her hands in his. I know, Arya. It's been on my mind too. Every day feels like we're just counting down the moments. Captain Mark Jensen and Dr. Alan Torres joined them in the garden, sensing the gravity of the conversation. Mark, who had become a close friend and confidant to both, spoke up. Is there anything we can do? Any way to extend your stay? Arya shook her head slightly. My mission parameters are clear, and I've already extended as much as I could. My people expect me back to report on everything I've learned here, about Earth and about humanity. Alan, ever the problem solver, chimed in. What if we set up a communication link between Earth and Seraphine? We could continue collaborating, sharing knowledge and research. That's a good start, Elias said, squeezing Arya's hands. But it doesn't solve our other problem. The four of them sat down on a nearby bench, under the gentle glow of the garden lights. It's more than just a mission now, Elias continued. It's about the life we've built together. Arya, I can't imagine not being with you. Arya looked at Elias, her eyes filled with emotion. And I can't bear the thought of leaving you. But we come from different worlds, Elias. Literally. What are we going to do? Mark, who had been listening intently, spoke thoughtfully. What if Elias goes with you, Arya? At least to visit Seraphine? The suggestion hung in the air, startling yet filled with possibility. Elias turned to Mark, a mix of surprise and curiosity on his face. Is that even possible? It's unprecedented, Alan added. But then, everything about this has been unprecedented. We could work on making it a part of a cultural exchange program. Extend our reach beyond Earth. Arya considered the idea, her heart filling with a mixture of hope and fear. It's a beautiful thought, and I would love nothing more. But it's not just about visiting. Elias, would you really leave Earth, even if just for a while? Elias didn't hesitate. For you, yes. I'd go beyond the stars. The group spent the rest of the evening discussing potential ways to make such a journey possible. They talked about the logistical, ethical, and physical challenges involved. It was a daunting task, but the seed had been planted, and now it was a matter of nurturing it to fruition. Over the next few weeks, Elias, Mark, and Alan put together a proposal for the first interstellar cultural exchange mission. They worked tirelessly, consulting with space agencies, diplomats, and scientists, laying out the benefits of such an exchange for both Earth and Seraphine. As the departure day approached, the mood among them was bittersweet. They gathered in the same garden where so many significant conversations had taken place, to celebrate their achievements and contemplate the future. We've done everything we can, Mark said, clapping Elias on the back. Now it's up to the powers that be. Alan raised his glass in a toast. To new frontiers, and to love that transcends them. Arya took Elias's hand, her voice steady but emotional. No matter what happens, I want you to know that these months have changed me forever. You all have given me a second home. Elias pulled her close, his voice soft. And you've given me a new universe, Arya. No matter where you go, part of my heart goes with you. As the stars twinkled above, mirroring the lights in the garden, their hearts were full of hope and determination. Whatever the future held, the journey they had embarked on together had already changed them, and perhaps, in a small way, it would change the world too. The day of Arya's departure arrived quicker than anyone wanted. The research facility's landing pad was quiet, the early morning mist still clinging to the ground as the sun began to rise. Elias, Mark, Alan, and the rest of the team gathered to say their farewells. Elias stood next to Arya, holding her hand tightly. It doesn't seem real that you're leaving, he said softly, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Arya looked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I never thought I'd find a reason to stay on another planet, but I found many reasons here. Especially you. Mark and Alan joined them, each carrying a sense of solemnity. You know we're going to keep working on the proposal for Elias to visit Seraphine, Mark said, trying to inject a bit of optimism. This isn't the end. Arya nodded, managing a smile. I know, and I'm grateful to both of you. You've done so much more than I could have ever expected. Alan, holding a tablet with the final checks for the spacecraft, gave her a reassuring nod. We've triple-checked everything, Arya. You'll have a safe journey back, and we'll keep the communication lines open. We'll be talking again soon. As they walked toward the spacecraft, Lucas and a few other team members came forward, each one expressing their goodbyes and well wishes. Arya thanked them, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I'll carry a piece of Earth with me, thanks to all of you. Once at the spacecraft, Elias turned to Arya, unable to hide his sorrow. I wish we had more time. Arya reached up to touch his cheek. We will, Elias. This is just a pause, not the end. Remember, you have to come and see the stars from Seraphine. Elias nodded, his throat tight with emotion. I will. And I'll be waiting for the day I can show you more of Earth. They embraced, a long, lingering connection that spoke volumes. As they pulled apart, Arya climbed the steps to her spacecraft, turning to wave at everyone one last time. The engines of the spacecraft hummed to life, and as it lifted off the ground, a silence fell over the crowd. They watched as it ascended higher and higher, until it was just a speck against the dawn sky. Mark clapped Elias on the shoulder, breaking the reverie. Come on, let's go back inside. There's still a lot of work to do, and we've got plans to make. Elias watched until the spacecraft was out of sight, then turned and walked back with his friends. Yes, we have a future to plan. Inside, over cups of coffee, the team gathered around a table, discussing the next steps. We'll need to follow up with the space agencies and get the political wheels turning, Alan said, outlining the strategy. And we'll keep improving the communication tech. Make it faster, more efficient, Lucas added, eager to contribute to bridging the distances between Earth and Seraphine. Elias, feeling the weight of Arya's departure, but also the promise of their future reunion, nodded. Let's get to work then. We have a universe to connect. As the meeting ended, Elias stepped outside once more, looking up at the sky. The sun had fully risen now, bathing the world in light. He felt a profound connection to the cosmos, a sense that the vastness that separated him from Arya was just another challenge they would overcome. With a deep breath, he whispered to the breeze, "Wait for me, Arya. I'm coming." The end of Arya's visit marked not a conclusion, but the beginning of a larger journey, one that would perhaps one day change the understanding between two species forever.